Lipovski, who's going to talk about the Facebook Poker Agent. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Is it on? Test 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. I really enjoyed the previous talk, did you? Those were certainly the kinds of things that you don't find in the Intel manuals. But after a really interesting technical presentation, I'm going to present something non-technical, hopefully refreshing, and still interesting. And it's going to be a short presentation about a case that we researched last year. There are a couple of interesting buzzwords in the title, and those are also the things that the reasons why we started researching it, why it caught our attention in the first place. But I'll get to that. I'm a malware researcher. This is where I work, ESET's Security Research Lab. This room is what we call Houston. I think you can see what the reason for that is. Our first primary goal, our tasks, what we do here is to do detection, to create detection signatures and ensure that our antivirus users are being protected from threats. And the secondary task that which we are doing is research, where we are trying to learn more about the specific malware, either malware that's really interesting or malware that's somehow problematic. And one of those research cases is what I'm going to be presenting today. So, Facebook, I think it needs no introduction. What caught my interest was that about 3 months ago, when I was checking, it had like 800 million active users. When I was updating my slides last night, it turns out that Facebook now has 1.11 billion active users. Basically, one out of every 7 people on the planet are using Facebook. So it's pretty obvious that it's a very popular vector for the malware writers as well, for use both as a distribution vector, but I'll be showing cases where it's not only being used as a distribution vector, but also as a motive for doing whatever they want. Is that mine? No, it's not. Okay, before I get to the main topic of the talk, a couple of older interesting cases. This malware, which we detect as Delve QCZ, other AV companies detected under different names, is a case which isn't really new, but it's still, I would call it the most well carried out social engineering attack on Facebook, which we have seen until the present day. It's also a relatively interesting malware. It was doing stuff such as distributed denial of service attacks. It was doing Bitcoin mining. It would try to remove the antivirus software from the system. Had a downloader component. Was basically one part of a bigger bundle. But what I want to talk about briefly about this is how it was spreading and how it went on with its social engineering ploys. So it was spreading through Facebook and also the Russian social network of Kontakte. So I think we're all pretty used to the fact that when you're using some instant messenger or Facebook or some other communication protocol, you get spam messages from either infected users or from bots or whatever, who can be or who may or may not be part of your friends list, and you will be getting a malicious URL pointing somewhere leading to malware or through some other scam. Usually these are pretty hard to detect, and they come out of the boom, out of context, easy to spot. That was not the case with this malware. It would actually try to mimic a real conversation. Of course, this was all scripted, so if you wrote back to the malware, tried to have a real conversation, asked a question perhaps, it wouldn't be able to respond. But nevertheless, it's quite interesting that the malicious link doesn't come in the beginning, but it only comes after 1, 2, 3 other, let's say, introductory messages trying to build up sort of your trust. And there are also, you can't see it in the screenshot because of the contrast, but there are also time delays between the messages, so it doesn't come boom, 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 one after the other, but there are some time delays just to make it look like as if it was a real person writing this. And if we click on the link, something not unexpected comes up, of course. It's the old trick that we are very well used to. If you want to watch this exciting, shocking, sexy video, you must upgrade your Flash player, video codec, whatever. That's old news. But what this malware did is, again, improved this technique. And to make it more credible, more convincing, and make the potential victim even more curious to click on the link, it would take his Facebook name, it would extract that, and make him in the leading role of the shocking video. And if not, that wasn't enough to convince the victim, it would also extract his Facebook, a couple of his Facebook friends, and try add make-believe comments underneath the video saying, "Terrible! How could you do that? You must be so ashamed after doing that." So obviously, this proved as to be very effective. And many people actually got infected by this. The second example, perhaps we could call it as less serious. It wasn't spreading malware, or at least we didn't see it spreading malware at the time when we were analyzing it. What is often the case with these web sort of detections is that they are very dynamic. So one day they may be serving one thing, and then, or in a couple of hours, they may be serving something else. At the time when we were researching, I think it was a promotion campaign for some porn site. So it was basic like-jacking scam, trying to ensure viral spreading so that it would get to as many people as possible. But what was interesting is a couple of things. This is a screenshot after we blocked that. This is a fake copy of Facebook. This wasn't on the legitimate one. We're not sure how the user was directed here in the first place. But what is interesting is that the authors, they were expecting antivirus companies to detect this, so they would here add a sentence saying you have to temporarily disable your antivirus and claiming that it's a false alarm. Okay, so that was kind of clever. And what would the victim see if it wasn't blocked? It was something like this. So again, the old trick, you have to install some sort of DivX plugin in order to view I think that says carelessness of celebrities on TV, naked celebrities, they work each time. So in order to view these videos, you must install some kind of DivX plugin. Now, what's interesting about this case was that we're very well used to cases where malware is in various scripts, where malware is in executables and stuff like that. This time, it's not as common to see malware as browser plugins. So this would actually check what kind of browser you're running, and it would serve you the plugin accordingly. I think it had plugins both for Firefox and for Chrome. And if you install that, it would wait until the victim would connect to Facebook, and then it would post messages on his wall, make wall postings promoting this website, and it would also tag all of the friends of the victim, which would ensure the viral spreading of the campaign. Now to the main subject of our talk, PokerAgent. This was also spreading through Facebook, but it was actually the Facebook credentials were the target of this attack. So why did this catch our attention in the first place? Because we are dealing with tens of thousands of binaries which we process automatically, and we process hundreds of stuff, go through our analysts' desktops every day. And of course, we don't look at everything in such high detail. But this caught our attention because it was an interesting binary. It had strings like something to do with Facebook. It had something to do with Zynga Poker, and in the strings in the binary, we saw stuff like PokerAgent. So we were curious about what this was all about. This is the detection name. As you can see, it was written in C#, which also made it quite easy to analyze, as it's decompilable to a state which is pretty much the former source code. So we started looking further into this case. It was active. I don't think you can see the timeline down there, but it was active around the end of 2011, about December was the peak, and it was pretty stable in the first quarter of 2012, and then we were carrying out the investigation throughout 2012 and only published at the beginning of this year. I'll be talking about more about the investigation in a later slide. And as our telemetry showed us, the threat was almost exclusive to Israel, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Yeah, and that sudden drop over there is about the end of February 2011, which is when it basically stopped actively spreading. The CNC servers were still active after that time, but the campaigns which promoted the malware were at the end, at their end. Okay, so what's it all about? As I said, we analyzed the malware. We found out that it formed a botnet, and we found out that this guy had at least 800 bots under his command, which I guess is not that many, but they got the job done. And these bots, they were instructed to carry out specific tasks. What's interesting is that these bots, they weren't the final victims of the attack. The final victims were the people who got their Facebook credentials stolen, obviously. And the bots, actually, they had their role in the whole scheme were that there was some sort of proxy. So the attacker, he had this botnet under his control, and he didn't want to carry out the malicious requests from his own computer, but he would instruct the individual bots to make the fraudulent queries, the fraudulent tasks. He also had quite an extensive database of stolen Facebook credentials. We were able to estimate a number, which I'll show in just a second. And the tasks, they basically comprised of this credential pair, a Facebook username and a Facebook password. This was sent as one task to a bot. This was sent individually, so it wasn't broadcasted to all of them. And the task, the job of the bot was to extract two pieces of information, and he was interested in the Zynga Poker points that the player had, or the Facebook account had, or whether it was a poker player, and also any credit card links linked to the account. And under a certain condition, it would also carry out further phishing. So, as I said, it was written in C#. We were able to decompile it into the source code. After looking at the code, it's probably the case that it was some guy who did programming before, so it wasn't a total amateur. As when we compared it to a different malware that we were seeing, it was probably someone who didn't create malware professionally. So my guess would be that it was some sort of his first experiment with the dark side, with malware. And this was also confirmed when we were monitoring the threat. Through our generic detection, we were able to see the history, basically, of how the whole thing evolved. We were able to track older versions. So I think we tracked over about 36 versions of the Trojan. and we were able to see like each addition to what the guy added to his code when he recompiled it, how he tweaked it, how he adjusted the settings. There were also some pretty major changes about how the communication protocol worked, how he access his CNC, how his database worked, and everything. So again, not without going too much into technical details, because it isn't really sophisticated as it's written in C#. I just want to detail how exactly he got about accessing the information that he was interested in. So the Zynga poker, all he needed to do was query this URL. He would just add the Facebook ID, the Facebook numerical ID, which we know that it's pretty easy to get. And then we had this signature to sign the Zynga request. We saw that in different binaries, this signature was constantly updated to make sure it worked. And this URL would return something like this from Zynga, in this XML format. And he was particularly interested in the points that the player had. He was interested, I think, in the gender and in the rank, which is basically, I think, the same thing as points. Okay. The second thing, of course, credit card information. It's pretty obvious why he was after this, after credit cards. Not that obvious, perhaps, with the poker points, because as you're probably well aware of, Zynga doesn't officially offer cashing out of chips, but I think there are some unofficial ways to do it. Of course, if he had access to these accounts, it's hard to speculate what he was after. Maybe he was just a poker player who wanted to get his hands on some more chips, or he wanted to monetize it. I think the latter was probably the case. Back to the credit cards. What he needed to do to access this was be logged into the Facebook account, which he was able to do because he had the access credentials, navigate to this site, and basically he parsed the HTML. He was interested in the number of stored credit card. He didn't actually extract any information, so probably when he found out that there was something stored here, he would connect manually and extract the credit card number. So that's what you will find in your Facebook settings here. I don't have any payment methods saved, and I very strongly discourage anyone from doing so, not only to Facebook, but also to any other such public account, obviously. And the phishing. So these were the two types of information that he tried to extract, and based on the fact whether he was successful or not, there was the resolution is probably too low for you to read that. But this is a code snippet from the malware. It's a function called shouldPublish, and it's testing whether it's a test or what kind of finance is the Boolean value, whether he has any credit cards information stored in the account, and U rank is the poker rank. So basically his logic was that if he found some credit cards, or if he found a rich poker player, a poker player with many points, he considered that a success, and he didn't carry out the phishing, probably to not to be so suspicious. But in case he was unsuccessful, he would add phishing posts to the victim's Facebook wall. This is a screenshot from the code how he communicated with his CNC protocol. As you can see, the communication was done in SOAP, and there are some parameters which were sent from the server to the bot. There's a user ID. There's a Facebook username and a Facebook password, and this is a DES encrypted phishing link. So the bot would get this task, and it would act on it. It would connect to the victim's Facebook account, and it would add this link to his wall using one of two methods. Now, as I mentioned, this was active in Israel, and the links, they were also all in Hebrew. The phishing links were what you would probably expect. So it was tabloid topics, naked celebrities, which work every time, as I said. So this was some Kim Kardashian naked, I think. This would lead to some Big Brother celebrities sleeping together and stuff like that. So basically, someone clicked on the link on the Facebook wall. He was directed to some sort of middle site, we could call it that. And if he clicked on anything on this site, either a link or a picture, he would be navigated to a Facebook phishing site, which would collect his Facebook credentials and send them back to the attacker. So the circle closes, and this actually provided us the answer which we had in the beginning, was how he got his hands on the database of the stolen credentials in the first place. So that was an answer to something we were initially confused about. A little bit more detail on the inner workings of the code. As I said, this wasn't a really something which we could call sophisticated malware. We are analyzing much more complex threats, rootkits, and stuff like that. But it's obvious that this guy did put some effort into his work. This part of the code is the code that's responsible for logging into the Facebook account, and he's also prepared for scenarios when you're logging in from a different computer, it would display you a website saying that it's an unknown device. So this code, I can share the slides afterwards, and you can see the code from there. But it would basically parse the HTML, look for the tags which say this is okay or save device. It would also invoke a click into the appropriate fields. It would enter, so there's elements, inner text. It would save the computer that it's actually connecting from as home, and it would again make a click. So it was also prepared for this security mechanisms. So to summarize the whole thing, there was a guy. He was harvesting Facebook login credentials. So his motive was obviously to expand his database, and he tried to send these tasks to his bots in his botnet to update his database with these relevant two pieces of information: the poker statistics and the credit card information. It is unknown to us what he did with this information afterwards, whether he sold it to some third party or whether he abused it by himself. That we will not know. But after we found out this information, after we analyzed the code and we found out it was something pretty interesting, we started monitoring the botnet. After analyzing it, the CNC servers, they were still active, and we were able to assess the scale of these attacks, not only through our telemetry, which are obviously limited to our customers, but we were able to get a more broader view of how many people fell victim to this guy. We knew that he had at least 800 bots in Israel, and that his database contained at least over 16,000 Facebook access credentials. I'm saying at least because there could have been many more, but not all of these were actually legitimate, because some people, they weren't fooled by the phishing attempt. So there were also some addresses saying like screw you spammer.com and stuff like that. So not everyone was fooled. After we got these hard facts, and there were also some potential clues for a police investigation left in the binary. So that's why I was saying that it was probably somebody who didn't have past experience with malware coding, or it was somebody really clever who wanted to leave some decoys, as it goes innocent until proven guilty. But anyway, we forwarded this information to the appropriate parties. So that was the Israeli CERT, Israeli police. who are investigating this case. Unfortunately, I cannot disclose the results. What I can say is that after we shared these findings with Facebook, they were pretty prompt with their reaction and actually informing the victims and enforcing password removals and all their security policies and stuff like that. Okay, that's all about PokerAgent. In case you're interested in further stories and further cases like this, you can go to our blog, We Live Security. If you're interested in statistics, what's more prevalent in a particular region, you can go to virusradar.com. There's my email address for any question that you will not think of right away. If you have any questions right now, fire away.
Are there any questions? Don't be afraid. I guess there's no questions. So
Okay.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And before you go to the break, I will